Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Very Cold Lasagna podcast, your filthy casual place for all those filthy casual takes on the world of sports. I'm your host, DylanLasagna. This is episode number 156 of this icy yet spicy podcast. Today, we got a good show for you all because we have the final installment of our 2023 NFL season preview month that we started on July 1st. Yes, it was a little bit over a month ago, which has extended into August, so a month and a quarter of our season previews for the 2023 NFL season. But it is for good reason because, well, the preseason hasn't technically started yet, and we've covered 28 teams in our season previews, and now we have the Final Four. And that Final Four, well, you guessed by the title of this episode, and that is the AFC East division. So yeah, we got a lot to talk about here in our final set of NFL season previews for the 2023 season. And yeah, stick around because this is another one of those competitive AFC divisions that, yeah, it's going to turn some heads in this coming fall. A little bit of housekeeping notes before we get started with this episode. I did just come back from a weekend getaway, a camping trip. So a little bit of side notes. If you're asking about my thoughts on SummerSlam, WWE SummerSlam, you know, the biggest party of the summer down in Detroit, you know, the home of the Detroit Lions, pal. I did not catch that at all. So I will be catching up on SummerSlam, like literally right after I'm done talking to y'all. So yeah, I'm going to be catching up on SummerSlam. So I pretty much avoided all of social media, whether it's Twitter or whatever you call it now, X, Instagram, YouTube. Yeah, to avoid all the spoilers. Because, yeah, I'm not trying to get spoiled by any of this crap. Especially the main event, y'all. Tribal combat. Come on. There's no way I was going to get spoiled by those results. But anywho, yeah. I'm going to catch up on SummerSlam. And then I'm going to catch up on Raw 2. Coming soon. And yeah, there's a lot to catch up on with WWE that happened this past weekend. And I will have a late, out-of-date review of SummerSlam 2023. And also stay tuned on this coming month where who knows what will happen in regards to August. And then, yeah, there's the first bit of action with the NFL this past week as well in the very first preseason game of the season. And, you know, I didn't really catch that too much. So, I mean, there might not be too much to report there. But nonetheless, we're going to keep the ball rolling here on Very Cold Lasagna. And make sure you follow me on social media on Twitter and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna. And if you're listening to this on audio, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spotify for podcasters, wherever you get your podcasts, man, make sure you rate and review the show, whether it's a 1 or 5 stars. Your feedback means the world to me, man. And if you're watching this on YouTube, smash the like button, smash the subscribe button, leave a comment with your takes on whatever I'm talking about. And share this with your friends. Share this with a stranger. Share it with your neighbor. Share it with anybody. Your support means the world to me by just clicking the video and watching my face. So anyway, yeah, let's keep this gravy train rolling with Very Cold Lasagna. Let's have a good August like we had with July. So yeah, let's keep eating that Very Cold Lasagna inside that very cold fridge. So that being said, let's get a little bit into some brief training camp updates. I have a couple more here that I wanted to talk about before we get into our topic of the day, and that is the AFC East. We had, man, more injuries, ladies and gentlemen. More injury mania running wild. When it comes crashing down and it hurts inside. Bam, 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 na, na, na. More injuries around the NFL, and we haven't even got to what it's going to be week 3 of training camp. There might even be more injury mania running wild. But this past Monday, at the very tail end of July, the Denver Broncos got a big blow to the receiving core. Tim Patrick, who suffered a torn ACL during training camp last year, got Klay Thompson. He suffered a torn Achilles this past Monday. It's like, oh man, it's rough. Like, I feel bad for the guy. So his season's over. And yeah, back-to-back seasons. He suffered a torn ACL. And then trying to come back from that, he suffers a torn Achilles. Speedy recovery to him. Hopefully next year he won't have so much bad luck. And then Colts backup running back, Zach Moss suffered a broken arm that same day, and he's going to miss about a month and a quarter, so 6 weeks. So, man, that Colts running back room, especially considering that at the time I'm recording this, if Jonathan Taylor is not back with the Colts by this point, and yeah, that running back room is looking real bad. And it's continuing the theme of running backs. Their backup running back for the Cowboys, Ronald Jones, is suspended 2 games for violating the NFL's performance-enhancing drug policy. I mean, they have Tony Pollard, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of a loss there, considering that, there's no one really behind Tony Pollard. So yeah, so that's basically your training camp updates for around the league so far. I might have missed some, might have been more, but hey, what can you do, right? So yeah, let me know if I missed anything, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on how your team's doing in training camp going into your first preseason game for your team. So now let's get into our theme of the day, and that is the final installment of our 2023 NFL season previews, and that is none other than the AFC East, the last one that we have to talk about. So I sat down in this chair talking about the AFC East. I think this is the last division that we were talking about. No, it was the AFC West, but it was like the second to last one that we were talking about. I talked about the AFC East last year as the most compelling division in the NFL for all the big moves that they made in the offseason. And boy, did it certainly live up to that billing. You got the 2-time division leader having a big target on its back every single week from the rest of the teams in that AFC East. But then there were glaring concerns creeping up from the rest of the pack. And the pack leader, that 2-time defending division champion that was favored to win the Super Bowl, will wind up sealing the division yet again. Although at a very mental and emotional cost at the very end of the season. And that cost came at an impact come playoff time. And unfortunately didn't reach that goal of a Super Bowl. So now we're months removed. The AFC East is once again slated to be a dogfight, especially now with the addition of a familiar certain face coming from Green Bay down to Gang Green. He's switching the green and yellow to the Gotham Green. Meanwhile, you still have that 3-time defending division champions with still that big target on its back. You got that quarterback in that Gotham Green now. So I still certainly expect things to be a challenging battle in this AFC East. Why do I say that? Well, let's take a look at all 4 teams that are going to slug it out in what's going to be in a crazy fight. I don't know if it's going to be as crazy as the AFC North, but we'll see. Let's see how things pan out as I talk about our last division in our NFL season previews, the AFC East. So we begin our AFC East 2023 season preview by taking a look at a team that started off strong with the season thanks to its strong defense, but then the Jets really fell off at the very tail end of their 2022. And that is, of course, the team that I just mentioned, the New York Jets. So for the New York Jets, they were a surprise team early on, like I said, with that strong defense, and they looked poised for a wild card spot in the AFC in 2022. The only problem was the quarterback room. Like Zach Wilson, their second-year starter, the second overall pick in the 2021 NFL draft, he regressed significantly. He looked like really lost. He threw a lot of turnovers that was really unforced. And when he got benched, backup Mike White, who caught people a little bit by surprise, he didn't provide a solution this time around in this past season. And when they had to turn back to Zach Wilson because Mike White was injured, that didn't turn out to be a given either. And then towards the tail end of the season, they went to Joe Flacco. So that was basically the downfall of the Jets season. They went 7-10. Their promising season went up in flames again, that only positive from that season was that strong, very strong defense that Robert Saleh produced. So, of course, you want to go into 2023. You want to redo what you tried to do in this past season in 2022, and that was make the playoffs. But unfortunately, yeah, you had to figure out what we were going to do at quarterback because Zach Wilson didn't look like you were going to do that with him. So, looking at some of the team needs that I had for the New York Jets going into this coming season is that you had to get a starting quarterback in free agency. There were a couple of options out there, such as Derek Carr, Jimmy G, not enticing options, but you had to go get something because Zach Wilson was not going to get you there. You also had to get a new left tackle because that side of the offensive line had some questions going into this season, and then reinforce the secondary. Sure, you had linebacker CJ Mosley still performing at a solid level, and of course you also had Ahmad Sauce Gardner, who had a really excellent rookie season. But then there are other questions on the other side of the secondary. So you just wanted to reinforce the secondary to make sure you had another strong season from your defense. So now came the question of like, what exactly did they do? What exactly did they do to address the team needs that I had? So looking at some of their offseason events, they replaced Mike LaFleur, a little bit questionable, but okay. Their offensive coordinator with former Broncos head coach Nathaniel Hackett. Yeah, the guy that really was in over his head as a head coach for the Denver Broncos and was given the Christmas gift of getting fired after they got roasted by Patrick Starr on Christmas Day by the Rams. So, nonetheless, that was in the past. So, Nathaniel Hackett comes in as the offensive coordinator for the New York Jets. And then, of course, the big story of the Jets offseason back in March was the big trade to go and get Aaron Rodgers from the Green Bay Packers and bring him over to the Jets. You know, kind of like, what's that guy? Oh, yeah, Brett Favre. How Brett Favre came over, got traded from Green Bay to the New York Jets in 2008. Kind of familiar thinking, huh? So, yeah, Aaron Rodgers comes over from Green Bay and trades that green and yellow to some Gotham green. A little bit interesting there. But that's what Aaron Rodgers wants to do. Sure, okay. We need a new change of scenery. So, we'll see how Aaron Rodgers does in this new environment. He's a bit on the older side, 39 years old, but if he can still play, if he can have a little bit of a bounce back season because his last seasons in Green Bay, sure, there were a little bit of injuries that hampered his play, but he was making a lot of questionable decisions with his performance, a lot more turnovers than usual, and his inability to come in clutch in the playoffs. Like, the 2021 divisionals against the 49ers and then 2020 against the Bucks in that title game. But nonetheless, maybe a change of scenery should help Aaron Rodgers. Maybe. So before then, the Jets couldn't really do anything in free agency because, well, they're waiting to decide on compensation for Aaron Rodgers, or just waiting in general for this Aaron Rodgers trade to go through. So, fortunately for the Jets, they didn't really lose a whole lot of people. They only lost backup Mike White to the Miami Dolphins, and when their return specialist Braxton Berrios to the Miami Dolphins. They did resign a key offensive lineman in Connor McGovern, so that's something. Once they did manage to finally officially make the Aaron Rodgers trade official, that's when they got to work. They got some receiving help, Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb, Aaron Rodgers' buddies from the Packers. And then they got McCole Hardman from the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, honestly, they didn't need too much receiving help, but, it helps, especially considering you already have Garrett Wilson there, who did pretty well in his rookie year last year. So adding some more receivers definitely is no harm. And then the offensive lineman Billy Turner from Denver Broncos never can hurt getting more protection. And then in the draft, they couldn't really do a whole lot, but I feel like they made the most of it. They added an edge rusher by the name of Will McDonald. A little bit questionable why they decided to go for an edge rusher. I thought their first round draft need was an offensive lineman because they certainly could have added a little bit more protection for Aaron Rodgers, because that was kind of an issue with Zach Wilson last year, especially on the left side. But they rectified that a little bit in the later rounds, getting the likes of Joe Tippmann from Wisconsin and Carter Warren from Pittsburgh. So, at least they tried there. So when I look at this Jets offseason as a whole, they couldn't really do a whole lot because, they were getting held up on Green Bay. What exactly do you want in this Aaron Rodgers deal? Yeah, it's pretty much that simple. But, they still have a good amount of talent on that roster to make it work. It's so far, from what I've seen in the little snippets on Twitter, Aaron Rodgers has made good work with what he has down in training camp. So hopefully it pans out. The secondary, though, there's some small concerns, but not so much that, the secondary is going to get its butt whooped in this coming season, because you still got guys like Ahmad Sauce Gardner, Michael Carter, two corners that have played pretty well, but, the slot corner is a little bit worrisome. Linebackers CJ Mosley and Quincy Williams, they're still pretty solid linebackers for that Jets secondary. I was just hoping that, they get a little bit more depth behind those guys. So looking at some of their key potential games in 2023, the first one's a very big one because you're playing the Bills at home on Monday night. So definitely a big game to test out your kinks if you're the New York Jets. Obviously, there will be some growing pains. I know you look all fine and dandy now in training camp, and you didn't play at all. You didn't play the starters at all in the first preseason game against the Browns. And who knows how much you'll play Aaron Rodgers during the preseason. But yeah, there's definitely going to be some growing pains. It's totally going to be expected. And that includes this first game against the Buffalo Bills in a primetime spot. Then you host the New England Patriots. I expect them to win that game. You never know. I might jinx it now. And then, you got a kind of a tough out the following week against the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes on Sunday night. So a couple of primetime games to start out the season. And then week 6, you host the Philadelphia Eagles, a couple weeks after that. That's kind of a rough stretch for the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers. And then a couple weeks later, weeks 11 to 12, you get a AFC East divisional slate. You go to Buffalo to take on the Bills in a rematch. And then you host the Miami Dolphins. Yeah, those are two very important games if you want to try to scratch a claw if you're kind of in this division race against the Bills. So, looking at the season for the New York Jets, how is Aaron Rodgers going to perform in a new environment? Like I said, maybe a change in scenery, maybe having a better supporting cast that Green Bay didn't provide you will help. Let's see how Aaron Rodgers does. Maybe having a new head coach in Robert Saleh and having your offensive coordinator back in Nathaniel Hackett could certainly help things, but it's going to be on Aaron Rodgers to perform better, or if not worse, not worse at all, to propel the Jets into a better season than what Zach Wilson produced the last 2 years. And then this is concerning the running back position because, Breece Hall was well on his way to having a very good season last year. And then he tore his ACL, which was very unfortunate. So it's going to be interesting to watch how Breece Hall is going to come off that torn ACL injury from last year. So are they going to slowly ease him back in? Are they going to push him in right out of the gate? So some things to consider there. So, overall, looking at the Jets, they had chances to get to the playoffs last year. But, those quarterback problems with Zach Wilson and Mike White, it shut down those hopes. But Aaron Rodgers, you got him now. And who knows how long you'll have him because, he's on the later 30s, inching towards 40. He may not win you the division because you still have to deal with the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. And you never, like, I can't discount the New England Patriots that much, even though we still got questions about Mac Jones. But considering he was coming off a down year in Green Bay, he at least has a better supporting cast. And while I don't see them supplanting the Bills, in my opinion, in the East, they should still do well enough to at least get one of the playoff spots in what's going to be a competitive AFC. Just as long as Aaron Rodgers plays at a strong level. So I expect the Jets to bounce back, go 10-7, and yeah, I think they can make the playoffs. Again, just as long as Aaron Rodgers, Jets, Jets, ups his game. So now we leave the Gotham side of New York City to go into Foxborough, where once heralded the proud dynasty of the NFL, or at least it did. And that is, of course, the New England Patriots. So for the Patriots in 2022, wow, it was kind of a disappointing season to say at least, because, well, they were trying to follow up a solid 2021 with their new rookie quarterback at the time, Mac Jones. He had a solid year, but the problem was going into 2022 is that the Patriots, after Josh McDaniels, their former offensive coordinator, went to go to the Raiders and become their new head coach, they didn't address the position. Yeah, they were going to 2022 with two makeshift offensive coordinators that were going to share the duties. Yeah, Matt Patricia, a defensive guy, and then Joe Judge, a special teams guy. They were going to share the duties and handle the play calling for their second-year quarterback, Mac Jones. Yeah, that was going to work out right. That's going to work out well, right? Yeah, that was going to work out well. So it didn't work out well when it was Mac Jones or when he got hurt, Bailey Zappi. And yeah, it was just not a great experiment there. So yeah, they also, speaking of Bailey Zappi, they also fiddled around with having Mac Jones be the backup, and then Bailey Zappi would be that man under center starting certain weeks. So it was kind of weird how that played out. Sure, you had a strong defense that year, but at the end of the day, it's like, even though you have a good defense, yeah, if your offense can't do shit, you're not going to win games. And in most cases, that's what the Patriots suffered through in 2022. Mac Jones had a down year, mainly because, well, his offensive coordinators or coordinators didn't know what they were doing most of the time. And yeah, it wasn't a terrible record for the Patriots, 8-9, but it was clear that this was not going to be a good season for them. So for the Patriots, they had a couple of things that they had to address in the offseason if they want to get to their current goal in 2023, and that was trying to make a run at the playoffs, especially in this tough environment. So looking at their team needs that I had for them in my season recaps, they really had to retool the offensive line because their tackle spots were kind of shoddy. And one of the reasons why Mac Jones got hurt early on, especially in week 3 against Baltimore, he had that high ankle sprain and he was out a couple of games. And then you had to get Mac Jones two receivers, because Mac Jones not only struggled with not having an offensive coordinator, but he also struggled with the lack of receiving options in the passing game. Sure, you had Jacoby Myers there, but when you signed Kendrick Bourne to a big fat contract, you expect him to perform, but then most of the time he doesn't. So you need two receivers to go alongside Mac Jones to help his development, and especially considering what happened in free agency. And then you had to bolster the secondaries with 2 corners and a safety because, yeah, Devin McCourty wasn't going to be around forever. So yeah, those were my team needs for the New England Patriots in the offseason. Fortunately for New England, they finally did something to help out Mac Jones, and that was bringing back Bill O'Brien, who was a previous offensive coordinator for the Patriots, to do the same role. So for as much as I roast Bill O'Brien, Bob, during his time in the Houston Texans, at least he could help out Mac Jones, try to develop. I think he did pretty solid work with Deshaun Watson down in Houston. So we'll see how this works out. So looking at some of their free agency and draft moves, They did lose Jacoby Myers, the same guy that cost the Patriots the win in that certain game against the Raiders. That game. So yeah. They also lost their safety, Devin McCourty. He retired during the offseason, so a big hole to fill for the Patriots defense. They did re-sign corner Jonathan Jones, one of their positives in that defense, and safety Jabril Peppers. Looking at some of their free agency moves, they clearly couldn't do a whole lot because of that spending spree they went on 2 years ago, but they at least got some help in for Mac Jones. They got Juju Schuster from the Kansas City Chiefs, so they at least add some experience from a recent defending Super Bowl champion, and they got Mike Gesicki from the Miami Dolphins, so they get a tight end option now since Gronk, and a kind of reliable one at that. I think the only reason that Mike Gesicki didn't do so well last year with the Dolphins because they had too many receiving options in that offense. And then in the draft, this was where they really did pretty solid. They got one of the best corners in the draft, Christian Gonzalez from Oregon. So he's going to definitely be an instant starter for them. Edge rusher Keon White from Georgia Tech. Center Jake Andrews from Troy. So perhaps some more protection up front. Certainly can help for Mac Jones. Guard Antonio Mafi from UCLA. And another receiver by the name of Kayshon Boutte from LSU. So looking at the Patriots this past offseason, even though they got some guys like Jake Andrews from Troy, guard Antonio Mafi from UCLA, I feel like they could have gotten a little bit more protection up front for Mac Jones. I get it. Money was an issue in free agency because, again, they went on that massive spending spree. But I feel like, Bill Belichick should have made a little bit better use of that money. He at least got Mac Jones some receiving help, so that helps. But, they should at least found a little bit of more, value offensive linemen that was available in free agency, whether it is guards, tackles, anything, because Mac Jones really struggled with protection, so that's why he got hurt a good amount in 2022. Because again, let's be honest, who cares if the Patriots defense is top tier if Mac Jones kept getting sacked? On the other end, he got sacked a lot in 2022. But again, on a positive note, they at least gave him some solid receiving help. They got Gesicki, they got Juju Schuster, and especially now that Jacoby Myers, their top receiving option, is gone, you're gonna need someone like Schuster to help you out. So looking at some of the key games in 2022, it's gonna be a big doozy to start the year for New England. You play the Philadelphia Eagles and the Miami Dolphins at home, so two very tough games. Playing Jalen Hurts and Tua back-to-back weeks. So, good luck with that. And then right after, you play Aaron Rodgers and the Jets down in the Meadowlands. So New England has to be very careful. They gotta at least steal one of these two games, if not two of them, because if they go 0-3, they're in real trouble early on. And in week 6, they go down to Las Vegas in a rematch of that game from last year. But they get to see their old buddy, their old new friend that's now in the silver and black, Jimmy James Garoppolo and Josh McDaniels, as they play the Raiders, pal. And then they go back home the next week to take on the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen. And they pretty much, Josh Allen and them pretty much dominate. They're not scared of Gillette anymore. So they better be careful there. So looking at the Patriots going into the season, my biggest question for them is, centered around Mac Jones. Is he finally going to be able to have a very good year now that he has an actual offensive coordinator in Bill O'Brien? Is Bill O'Brien going to be able to dial up some pretty good plays for Mac Jones? Certainly, you would think so, right? Take advantage of Mac Jones' biggest strengths and apply it to the offense. Certainly it'd work, right? And I just hope that the offensive line is going to be able to hold up and give him the time that he needs to make those plays develop. So hopefully something will work out. So overall, looking at the Patriots, considering what they've done in the offseason, I feel like they could have done more with the protection up front. Who knows? I could be wrong. Maybe they pan out. At least, they got some protection for Mac Jones. Not protection, receiving help. So he has something to work with. And then the defense, I think it's going to be pretty solid, if not very solid, especially in the secondary where you got two quality corners in Jonathan Jones and Christian Gonzalez. The problem is that they got a very hard schedule to start the year. You got to play the Philadelphia Eagles and Miami Dolphins in your first two games. Then you got to play the Jets, and then you got to play Dallas. Even though we know how Dallas can be sometimes, and then you got to play the Bills. It's a very rough first half schedule. And if these problems on offense persist, like the offensive line, these problems carry over into 2023 from 2022. Yeah, expect the Patriots to fall and prey into the bottom of the division early on, especially considering they're in a tough AFC East and AFC as a whole. So, considering what they didn't do in the offseason, like I felt like again they should have done more. Yeah, I kind of expect such. Now, this is not a knock on Mac Jones, but yeah, it's more of a knock on your team should have done more for you. So I expect the Patriots to go 6-11. I know it sounds harsh. Maybe I'm doubting them, but yeah, sorry, man. The odds are not in your favor for a team that was once hailed as a dynasty, and it's not looking good for the New England Patriots in 2023. So we go from the MA of Foxborough down to the MIA of South Beach, Miami, to take a look at none other than the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins made some major additions last offseason, especially considering the moves on the offensive line, running back, and of course, the big trade to go and get Tyreek Hill, wide receiver from the Kansas City Chiefs. So I thought that the Miami Dolphins were going to be a serious threat to the Buffalo Bills in 2022. And considering that they started out 3-0, Tua Tagovailoa looked really good to start out the year. You got a really strong comeback against the Baltimore Ravens, and you got an upset win over the Buffalo Bills. You thought the Miami Dolphins were going to be one of those teams that were going to really make a run to the playoffs. But then that win against the Bills where the problems started to begin. Because quarterback Tua Tagovailoa suffered the first of what ended up being a trilogy of concussions. And from there, along with the poor play of the team in December, ended up being the team's downfall. They got the same 9-8 record, and they had a fighter's chance, surprisingly, against the Bills in the 3 match that they had in the playoffs, but it was not to be. Despite, even leading at one point against Josh Allen, the Bills. But they ended up losing that game against Buffalo in the playoffs. And, well, a lot of people like me were wondering, what's next for the Miami Dolphins? What's next for Tua? Is he going to be able to stay healthy next season? So, nonetheless, you're here now. Tua is healthy, hopefully. But now the thing is, you have to keep him healthy if you want to accomplish your goal for this coming fall, and that is to try and win the AFC East. So looking at some of my offseason priorities for the Miami Dolphins, and I talked about them back in February, is that you have to keep Tua healthy. You got to upgrade the interior offensive line because they did a good job of upgrading the exterior at tackles, but their interior was surprisingly a little bit shoddy. That's where things start to fall apart in terms of keeping Tua healthy. That's where he got hit a lot in that season. So you had to find a little bit more depth at guard, and then add some depth in the defensive line behind Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips because before Bradley Chubb came along in that trade, it's like they didn't really have a lot of pass rushing help in that department. So just adding Bradley Chubb in that trade deadline, they didn't do a whole lot, to be honest with you. So they certainly could have used some help there. So looking at what the Dolphins did in the offseason, one of the big things that they got was trading for Rams corner Jalen Ramsey. So they made a big trade to help out their secondary. So they got one of the top corners in the league. You know, he's a little bit on the older side, but still, he can still play at a pretty strong level. They did trade away tight end Hunter Long, but you know he was a backup anyway. But hey, you're getting some help for your secondary. So in light of that trade, they released Byron Jones as part of the trade. And then tight end Mike Gesicki went to the New England Patriots, so kind of a loss there. But then again, you can only throw the ball to so many people in that offense that, yeah, what are you going to do, man? And then looking at some of their re-signings, they re-signed both of their running backs, Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr. Not bad. And then some of their additions via free agency and the draft. You have safety Deshaun Elliott from the Detroit Lions. I think he could be a solid help in that already pretty solid defense. Linebacker David Long from the Tennessee Titans. And then just in case Tua gets hurt again, backup quarterback Mike White from the New York Jets. As I talked about, Mike White, you know, he provides some solid backup experience, but there are times where he can kind of kill you with turnovers. And then receiver Braxton Berrios from the New York Jets also comes over to the Dolphins. So another receiving option for Tua. And then in the draft, they didn't have a lot of draft picks to work with because of various trades that they committed in prior years. So I believe they only had 4 of them, and 3 of them were pretty notable. So looking at their draft, they drafted corner Cam Smith from South Carolina, running back Devon Achane from Texas A&M, and receiver Elijah Higgins from Stanford. So looking at the Dolphins offseason and their moves, my biggest one that stood out to me is like, why didn't they prioritize the offensive line more? Like at any point in the offseason. Like they certainly knew that they needed more blockers, especially on the interior, whether it was as starters or depth. Like, yet they didn't use any of the money, like whether it was little or big money that they had in free agency, or one of the 4 draft picks that they had. Because you certainly could have used like one of your draft picks at, let's say, guard over a running back. So I'm just saying, like, you could have used like any one of your resources to go and get some help at the offensive line. Because, you know, your current offensive line is, when healthy, it's good, but it's like, just like Tua, it's some of them can't stay healthy. So they really better hope that the offensive line can protect Tua this season and at the same time stay healthy. And then on the defensive end, they're going to need rookie corner Cam Smith to really step up his game. But why do I say that? Well, that's because Jalen Ramsey, their trade acquisition, well, he got injured. He got injured early on in training camp, and he suffered a serious meniscus injury that's going to keep him out for most of the season. So he's not going to be back until, I believe, December. So a really big loss early on for the Miami Dolphins. So yeah, that's the best course of action for him, you know, to keep his career going, having the full procedure. But if Cam Smith's going to be the one replacing him, opposite Xavier Howard, then he's going to have to be the guy that steps up big. Those are big shoes to fill in replacement of Jalen Ramsey. Looking at some of their key games of 2023, week 1, you have to travel to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers. And right after that, you have to go to New England to take on the Patriots. So a 2-game road stand to begin the season. And then week 4, you travel to Buffalo to take on the Bills. So like three of the 4 weeks early on in the season, kind of like important ones. So Chargers, Patriots, Bills, like 2 division games early on in the season. And then week 7, you go to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. Tua versus Jalen Hurts. You know, that Alabama rivalry. You know, that little taste in the national championship. Remember, for some of you that remember that, I don't know. And then week 9, they go to Germany to take on the Chiefs. They're technically the road team in that game, but still a big challenge there. Whether it's in Kansas City or in Germany, they got to find a way to limit Patrick Mahomes in a very important AFC game. So, of course, the big question surrounds Tua Tagovailoa. Can the Dolphins keep him healthy? Last year they didn't do a really good job of that. And they didn't even really do good job of just like overall maintaining his health. Like the overall concussion situation, it's like they didn't handle that very well. So the Dolphins have to do well in protecting Tua, and Tua himself. He has to do better in terms of recognizing pressure as well. Like he has to recognize oncoming pressure so he can protect himself. So overall, for the Dolphins to succeed this season, they have to keep Tua healthy. So looking at this season, looking at their outlook, the Dolphins have a lot of difficult opponents on their schedule. A good chunk of them coming in the first half of the season, like the Chargers, the Patriots, the Bills, the Eagles, the Chiefs. A lot of it's on the road too. But then things should ease up a little after their bye week once they're done in Germany. But again, that direction is going to dictate on, as I said repeatedly, the ability to keep Tua Tagovailoa healthy as possible. And actually completely healthy. If they can keep him healthy, great. They have a very good chance to snatch the division away, but possibly from the Bills and the Jets. If Tua gets hurt again, he has to miss time. You have to put in Mike White. Then it's just going to be another repeat of 2022. It's going to be another rerun of that year. Perhaps even worse than that. So the Dolphins, they got to do all they can to keep Tua Tagovailoa healthy. If he stays healthy, I expect them to go 10-7, if not better than that. If they can't keep him healthy, yeah, it's going to be below that. So Dolphins, you got to keep your man healthy. Otherwise, you're going to sink down the river. Down the river, water, the beach, whatever. Keep your man healthy, Miami. So the final team that we're going to be talking about, not just in this AFC East season preview, but in all of our 2023 NFL season previews. And it comes down to this. The team that was expected to make the Super Bowl last year, but unfortunately did not. And that is the team in Western New York, and that is the Buffalo Bills. For the Buffalo Bills in 2022, they were one of the two overwhelming preseason favorites to make the Super Bowl in 2022. And with a lot of good reason. Obviously, you had a quarterback in Josh Allen and a high-powered offense that included the likes of Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, and Dawson Knox at tight end, and a pretty solid offensive line, and a defense, that can play well in the secondary. They're just missing a strong pass rush that cost them the AFC divisional game in that thriller in 2021. So now they address that in getting Von Miller in the pass rush. So you had a strong pass rush, finally supplementing Josh Allen's powerful offense. And the Bills, midway through the season, they finally looked poised to reaching that goal in spite of some issues with the offense. But the season derailed for a variety of reasons, but none of them affected more than the emotional impact that the game in Cincinnati in Week 17 had. The whole Damar Hamlin situation, him collapsing on the field with the heart attack and all that. It's just, good God's grace that Damar Hamlin is alive and well and doing nice things in training camp, by the way. But at the time, though, it really had an emotional impact and a mental one at that. The Bills were really checked out by that point. They couldn't really overcome that toll of that moment. Sure, they won the AFC East that year again. They outlasted the Dolphins in the wild card, but it was clear that when they got their butt whooped by the Cincinnati Bengals in the divisional game, it's clear that they couldn't really execute anything all that well. They made a lot of mistakes in that game against Cincinnati, and it's clear that they were just emotionally checked out of that season. Like as much as they wanted to go the distance in support of their teammate, it's just like they were just too overcome with it. They were just really overcome with all that emotion. So for the Buffalo Bills, you're really hoping that you want to accomplish the goal that you couldn't in 2022, and that's finally reach the Super Bowl and hopefully win it. So to do that, some of my team needs for the Buffalo Bills back in March when I talked about them is you got to continue to address the interior offensive line because it was kind of an issue, especially considering the additions that they have were pretty much older veteran offensive linemen. So they had to get a little bit younger at that spot. Whether if it was a little bit older, potentially maybe some good ones. They also had to find another receiver too, opposite Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis. Gabriel Davis, by the way, he was coming off a down year, a disappointing one. So yeah, that's why they really need some help for Stephon Diggs, who, by the way, was pretty pissed off in that last divisional game and kind of had a standoffish during the offseason with the Bills in light of that. So kind of interesting there, but it seemed like cooler heads prevailed in the last couple months. And then you had to find a certain replacement in the draft at linebacker because, well, we'll get into that just right now. Linebacker Tremaine Edmonds, a key part of that defense, went to the Chicago Bears in free agency. So you lost one of your key linebackers in free agency. So you had to go find his replacement in the draft because, the Bills don't really have a lot of money to spend. They also lost one of their solid backup receivers. They released Isaiah McKenzie, and he later signed with the Indianapolis Colts. And one of their running backs, Devin Singletary, went to the Houston Texans. I mean, it's okay. They have James Cook, Dalvin Cook's brother. Maybe they want to consider signing his brother, Dalvin Cook. I don't know. They re-signed safety Jordan Poyer, offensive lineman David Questenberry, so a solid part of that offensive line, and edge rusher Shaq Lawson. So two key parts of that defense is going to be there for the long run. Looking at some of their free agent offensive and defensive additions, it was actually a lot at solid deals. Safety Taylor Rapp and linebacker Leonard Floyd from the LA Rams, so bolstering up part of that defense and hopefully some help for Von Miller. Guard David Andrews from the LA Rams as well, and Connor McGovern. Why did I put Connor McGovern from the maybe there's two Connor McGoverns. I don't know. Guard Connor McGovern from the Dallas Cowboys. So beefing up that interior offensive line. They also got a swing tackle Brandon Snell from the Miami Dolphins. Backup running back Damian Harris from the New England Patriots. He's kind of had trouble staying healthy, so I can't really see him being a viable replacement for Devin Singletary. But either way, looking at their draft picks, they got a tight end by the name of Dalton Kincaid from Utah. So that should be interesting. He looks like a pretty good player, and they can utilize the two tight end set. I trust them to do that pretty well, especially considering you have two solid tight ends in Dawson Knox, and now you have Dalton Kincaid coming over from Utah. Maybe that's the receiving help that they need for Josh Allen. Go alongside Stephon Diggs, Dawson Knox, Gabriel Davis. Now you have Dalton Kincaid to run that two tight end set as much as possible. They continue to address the offensive line by getting guard Osiris Torrance from Florida, receiver Justin Shorter from Florida as well. So gain more help for Josh Allen at the receiver position, and then a swing offensive lineman Nick Broker from Ole Miss. So overall, looking at the Bills offseason, they did, I'd say, pretty solid, if not very solid, to strengthen the depth of their offensive line. Because, looking last year and where they struggled, I can blame a lot of how at times Josh Allen played poorly because, he was like running a lot again. And then he was just yeeting the ball like into unforced into defenders. Like, what are you doing, dude? But one of the large reasons why that is that, well, his protection up front was kind of bad in 2022. The interior was not great because, well, they were older, like such as Roger Saffold. He was on the older side. So it's smart of Buffalo to invest in two guards and draft another to beef up the interior. Whether they make the team is another story. So, speaking of the current team members, like Spencer Brown and center Mitch Morse, they kind of had down years last year, but let's see if they bounce back this year. Going on the other side, we still don't know if Von Miller's going to be ready for the season because he's still recovering from the torn ACL, and people are saying that he might not be ready to go for the start of the season. So if that's the case, then the Bills could face some issues. Now, sure, they got Leonard Floyd, who could possibly help out, but I don't think that's going to be enough. They really are going to need Gregory Rousseau and Shaq Lawson to step up in the interior again, or they may move them to the outside. I don't know. Again, I'm just a casual. But otherwise, that interior, Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones, they always find a way to get to the quarterback on the interior. But if neither the interior or the edge can get to the quarterback, then it's going to be a problem like it was late in the season back in 2021. They're going to have trouble getting to the quarterback, and it's going to make life for the secondary even harder. So if Von Miller's not there to start the season, or if he is there, but he's not back to full strength, this could cause issues. This could cause issues for the Buffalo Bills early in the season. Speaking of early in the season for the Bills, they got some couple games that they really want to keep an eye out for. You travel to New York to take on the Jets in the very first game of the season on a Monday night in prime time, playing against Aaron Rodgers in his first game as a New York Jet. Maybe you want to spoil the party of sorts. And then week 4, you host the Miami Dolphins in a rematch of that wild card game. So a couple of early division games for the Bills, including week 7 to get in Foxborough against the New England Patriots. So for the Bills, if you want to increase your chances of a division lead, this is your opportunity to go up 3-0 halfway into the season. And then a couple of big games late in the season to potentially up your lead or try to gain an advantage on the number 1 seed. You go to Cincinnati to take on Joe Burrow and the Bengals. And then week 12, potentially a Super Bowl preview. I don't know. Jalen Hurts at the Philadelphia Eagles. You go to Philadelphia there. And then week 14, after your bye week, you play Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in Kansas City. So a lot of tough games for the Buffalo Bills, but they've been in this situation before. So a lot of questions surrounding the defense, considering that, you lost Tremaine Edmonds at linebacker, and then you have questions surrounding potentially the early absence of Von Miller. So they're going to have to address those questions in the coming weeks when they have their first their 3 preseason games. And on the offensive side, are they going to be able to put less pressure on Josh Allen? And the third reason why Allen's play was kind of poor at times was because, again, they put so much pressure on him to do well, including having him run so much, having him make all these spectacular throws. It's because of the integration of the new offensive coordinator. You're going from Brian Daboll, who went to the New York Giants, and then you brought in Ken Dorsey as the new offensive coordinator. And the play calling really was too over-reliant on Allen's own athletic capabilities, rather than trying to balance out his capabilities and the team's. What were the team's biggest strengths? What about Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Dawson Knox? Why weren't they playing up to their strengths? So hopefully in year 2, they'll have that balancing act while still being able to showcase just how damn good Josh Allen is. So, looking at their season outlook, the Bills still have a top 10 roster in the NFL, led by one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the league. You still have Mahomes, you still have Burrow, you still have Josh Allen. The only thing is, both he and the team need to stop putting so much damn pressure on themselves. You gotta stop being try-hardish. They have some difficult opponents on the docket besides their own division, like the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Bengals. You have a couple of appetizers there here and there. But if they can put a team effort together to beat them all, they should definitely be looked at as a very strong Super Bowl contender again. So as long as they can find that balancing act on offense and don't be so try-hardish, don't try to force yourself into unnecessary situations. The Bills will not only win the division again, but they should find themselves where they should have been last year, and that is the Super Bowl. And with that, with the wrap on the Buffalo Bills. We are done. All 32 teams in the NFL done and dusted. All of our NFL season preview coverage is officially a wrap. And man, talking about all 32 teams and their road to the 2023 season, that's crazy. And I know some of you had some interesting takes and some roasts on my coverage, but hey, I can take it. I can embrace it, see where I need to do better for next time and maybe even this season. And yeah, I appreciate you guys joining me along in this journey in the last month and a quarter. So yeah, let me know all your thoughts, all your opinions, maybe even your roasts on all 4 of these teams and all 32 teams that I talked about this last month. But for this episode number 156, your thoughts on the AFC East division. We talked about the Buffalo Bills, the New York Jets, the New England Patriots, and the Miami Dolphins in this episode. So let me know your team's outlook, whether you're a fan of these teams or just a fan in general, about the 4 teams that we talked about here in our last installment of 2023 NFL season preview month and a quarter. But anyway, that is it for this episode of Very Cold Lasagna, episode number 156 of this icy yet spicy podcast on the world of sports. And as always, keep that lasagna very cold in the fridge on the world of sports. Again, thank you for sticking around. Thank you for tuning in to my coverage of our 2023 NFL season previews. But yeah, it's a wrap. It's over with, done and dusted. And until next time, until the next episode, peace out.